engagement does not magically occur because of an amazing culture. Okay, I've never seen that happen. Engagement happens when people feel like they've had lots of studies on this, and there's certain things they always come back with, and that is shared goals and values, integrity, respect, communication, transparency, employee growth, and environment. Those are the things that employees really care about. They don't care about taco trucks. They don't care about ping pong tables. They don't care about, pizza days and stuff like that. They want to be respected. They want to be treated the right way.
I will say they're not going to turn down the free taco day.
No, they will not. They will eat the pizza. It's funny the number of times I've seen things nowadays where people are really running down pizza parties. At the very same time, you're right. I've never seen somebody walk away from a pizza.
No.
They'll eat the pizza.
What they don't like is feeling like you're not treating me very well and you think that I can be bought for pizza.
Right. So I've got a great story if you want to hear it.
I do.
And that is back for our technicians in the first company, we had a bunch of work. Refineries work on a 6 to 4 time schedule, and then everybody's kicked out of the plant. But that doesn't mean there's not still work being done, emergency work. And so they had a whole tiered up program of how much they paid us based on whether it was afternoon work, it was evening work, overnight work, weekend work, holidays, etc. And the value to us was through the roof. And my COO came to me one day and he said, Clark, I'm paging these guys about this other extra work, and they're not answering their pages. And I said, okay, let me look into it. And I went and talked to a bunch of employees, and I could tell they were not telling me the truth. They were just giving me BS answers and everything. And so I grabbed one of the guys that kind of owed me. He had done really well with our training program, and he was where he wanted to be. And so I took him off to the side and I said, I really want to know why are you guys not answering your pages? I mean, this work is awesome and all that. And he said, Clark, that's the whole point. This is awesome work. And yeah, you guys make a whole lot of money. The problem is you're asking us to do the work in the afternoon and on the weekends and on the same pay rate that we're working between, 6 and 3, 6 and 4. Okay. So why should we want to do that? Why should we leave Thanksgiving dinner to go get a job to make you guys a whole bunch of money? The bottom line is we want our fair share. And again, this is another one of those things in the executive meeting. We were like, how stupid are we?
Yeah.
Okay. So I walked into my COO, and here's where I really talked to HR people about. I walked into my COO and I said, and the guy's name was Ken. I said, Ken, if I could get you 80% of the revenues and profits, but you had to give up 20%, would you do that deal? And he said, in a heartbeat. And I said, give me a couple of days. I need to put together a compensation program. We're going to do well. Okay. And so we ended up coming up with a compensation program. The employees thought it was awesome. They were getting their fair share. We were getting our fair share. People and profits working together, et cetera, et cetera. And all of a sudden, what happened was the income of these guys went up by a substantial amount. But it went up because they were bringing value to us, and all of a sudden mom at home is Thanksgiving dinner and she's telling him, oh no, you need to go get it. We'll keep it warm.
Yeah.
And you go take care of that job or you're going to make 3 times what you would make on a normal basis and everything. And so we made a ton of money. We quickly took over that whole area of business, literally hundreds of millions of dollars. The employees were happy, et cetera, et cetera. The last part of this story, it just sends chills up my back every time I think about it. I'm in North Carolina. We do an employee meeting. They leave. I sit down with the ops supervisor and the branch manager, and we're talking about our stuff and everything. And all of a sudden, the front door of the office opens up, and this lady walks through, and everybody knows her except for me. And she knows everybody but me. So she knew that I was who she was after. And she said, "Are you Clark Ingram? And are you the VP of HR?" And I said, "Yes." And she said, "Can I talk to you for a minute?" And I said, "You're the most important person in the room right now." And so we went outside, just the two of us. And I thought for sure she was going to talk to me about health insurance or something like that. There's some sort of problem. And she said, "You're the guy that came up with that compensation program for the extra work." And I said, "Yeah." And I said, "Is there a problem?" And she said, "No, but I got a question I want to ask you." And I said, "Okay." And she said, "Do you know how much that money, that extra money, means to my family?"
No.
Yes. And again, I got a chill up my back again about it. And that was, just think about that. I mean, again, know your people. That's another thing that I tell people on the other side of recruiting. Know who your people are. These guys, okay, that were working in these refineries and chemical plants, they were the salt of the earth. They were normal people, okay?
Yeah.
And they want to be married. They wanted to have a couple of kids. They wanted their kids to be in every sporting activity in the world. They wanted their wife to drive a nice car. They wanted a home that was not on wheels. Okay. They wanted, not a lot. They just wanted the basic stuff. None of these guys wanted to be CEO. None of these guys wanted to go to fancy cocktail parties and all of that kind of thing. They just wanted to provide for their families and everything. Okay. And so that's why, again, when we're talking to these people and we're interviewing them and we're sitting there going, yeah, this is one of our guys. These are who we're looking for, and all that. And it was a good example of how, again, people and profits working together, benefiting the boat. It's not just our guy making money, but it's also helping his family out, which is the most important thing in his life. That's the kind of people we were talking about.
Mm-hmm.
But that's how it can work together. And that's how companies grow, is by, making the employees part of the deal.
All right. Clark, what else would you like to share today?
Zero turnover is impossible. That's what HR people say. And that's part of my book. You're going to have turnover. But what if I were to tell you that I can give you zero turnover in one of your positions? So what are you going to choose? In that company, the technician company, you're going to pick your senior technicians. You're going to want zero turnover. Well, the last
in a
5
hospital,
years,
you're going to want your providers with zero turnover.
Exactly. And so what ended up happening, because of everything that we did, and there's lots of other things we did, was that we ended up in a spot. The last 5 years I was there, we never lost a senior technician. They had nowhere to go. They could not make us, okay, you want to go work for that company over there? You just took a 30% cut in pay. And they don't have the access that we do to work, et cetera, et cetera. And here's the real key to this whole thing is we were giving them no other reason to leave. Okay. And that the number of times I've heard people say, "I'm fine with my money. I'm not fine with the way I'm being treated or the disrespect or whatever." And it's really interesting how all of that happens. But one of the other things I think is real important to this whole thing is in the rest of the world, for instance, in this hospital, what is the goal for patient falls inside the building? The goal
Zero.
is zero. Exactly. Okay. What is the goal for preventable accidents within the building? Zero.
Zero.
Okay. So why is HR not holding themselves to the same goal and working just as hard to get to where we need to go and do whatever, you take that manufacturing guy and he's got that machine that's messing up. he's going to do everything he can to fix that machine and get it to the point where he's getting zero defects out of it. And I think that's real important to be able to walk into the C-suite and say, we have zero turnover in this particular position.